The rain poured down against my apartment window, creating a symphony of taps and splashes that normally would have soothed me. Not tonight. Tonight, the storm outside only mirrored the chaos in my life. I curled up tighter on my worn couch, the springs digging into my back as I stared at my phone screen, the light illuminating my tear-stained face in the darkness. "Hey, babe. Emma has a fever again. We need another $400 for the doctor. I'm sorry, but I don't get paid until next week." My finger hovered over the send button as guilt washed over me. Mike wasn't Emma's father. That deadbeat had disappeared the moment I told him I was pregnant, leaving me alone to raise our daughter. Mike was just the latest in a string of men who had promised to take care of us, but only ended up taking what little we had. 3 months in, and he was already borrowing money he never repaid. I hit send, then set my phone down and moved to Emma's room. My 4-year-old daughter slept fitfully, her blonde curls plastered to her forehead with sweat. I placed my palm gently against her cheek, feeling the heat radiating from her small body. My heart constricted. I'd already given her the last of the children's Tylenol, and I couldn't afford more medicine until I got paid from my waitressing job at La Stella, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown. The sound of my phone vibrating pulled me away from Emma's bedside. I expected Mike's usual excuses about being broke himself, or promises to pay me back that would never materialize. Instead, I found a message from an unknown number. "Who is this?" I frowned, checking the number I'd sent the text to. My blood ran cold as I realized my mistake. In my exhausted state, I'd mistyped Mike's number by 1 digit. I quickly typed back, "I'm so sorry, wrong number." The 3 dots appeared immediately. "You need $400 for a doctor?" I hesitated. Something about the directness of the question made me uneasy. "Yes, but that's not your problem. Sorry to bother you. Address." It wasn't even a question, just a command. I stared at the screen, bewildered. Who was this person? Why would they want my address? Emma coughed from her room, a painful, racking sound that tore at my heart. Desperation clouded my judgment. "What do you mean?" "Your daughter needs a doctor. Give me your address." A shiver ran down my spine. This stranger knew I had a daughter. Had I mentioned Emma by name in my text? I scrolled up and saw that I had. Still, something felt off about this interaction. My maternal instinct screamed danger, but my desperation whispered hope. "I can't accept money from strangers," I replied. "Smart, but your daughter is sick." Another coughing fit from Emma's room made my decision for me. What choice did I have? I typed my address, then immediately regretted it. What was I thinking? I could have called my mother, though she lived 3 hours away, or my friend Jess, though she was struggling financially herself. The reality was, I had exhausted all my safety nets. This wrong number felt like the universe throwing me a lifeline, however suspicious. 20 minutes later, a knock at my door sent my heart racing. I peered through the peephole and saw a broad-shouldered man in a dark suit, his face obscured as he looked down at something in his hands. This was a mistake. I shouldn't open the door. But before I could decide what to do, Emma called out for me, her voice weak and frightened. "Just a minute, sweetheart," I called back. Then, against every instinct for self-preservation, I unlocked the door and opened it a crack, chain still in place. The man looked up, and I felt the air leave my lungs. Dark eyes assessed me coolly from a face that belonged on a magazine cover. Sharp cheekbones, strong jaw dusted with stubble, and full lips pressed into a serious line. He was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with an expensive haircut and a watch that probably cost more than 6 months of my rent. "Sophia Jenkins?" His voice was deep, with the barest hint of an accent I couldn't place. "Yes?" My own voice came out as a whisper. He held up a paper bag from a pharmacy and an envelope. "Medicine and money. Take it." I stared at him, suspicion warring with desperation. "Why would you do this? You don't know me." Something flickered across his face. Amusement, curiosity. "Let's just say I have a soft spot for single mothers." Behind him, I noticed a black SUV idling at the curb. Another suit-clad man behind the wheel. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, and the streetlight caught on the droplets in this stranger's dark hair. He looked dangerous in a way I couldn't articulate. Not threatening, exactly, but like a caged predator, power held carefully in check. Emma coughed again, and the man's eyes shifted toward the sound. Your daughter needs medicine. I closed the door, unhooked the chain with trembling fingers, and opened it again. He handed me the bag and envelope without a word. Thank you, I said, clutching them to my chest. I'll pay you back, I promise. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. I know you will. He turned to leave, then paused. What's her name? Your daughter. Emma. He nodded once. Take care of Emma, Sophia. The way he said my name sent a chill down my spine, like he was tasting it. Before I could respond, he was walking back to the SUV, his movements fluid and confident despite the rain-slicked sidewalk. I closed the door and locked it, then leaned against it, my heart pounding. Inside the pharmacy bag, I found children's fever reducer, cough medicine, and even a small stuffed bunny. The envelope contained 5 crisp $100 bills. Tears pricked my eyes as relief washed over me. It was only after I'd given Emma her medicine and watched her fall into a more peaceful sleep that I realized the stranger had known my full name, even though I had never given it to him. The next morning, Emma's fever had broken. She sat at our small kitchen table, coloring and chatting with her new stuffed bunny while I made pancakes, her favorite. The mysterious man from the night before felt like a fever dream, but the medicine on the counter and the money in my purse confirmed he had been real. My phone pinged with a message. The same unknown number from last night. How is Emma feeling today? My hands trembled slightly as I typed back. Better, thank you. The medicine helped. I can't tell you how grateful I am. Good. You're working at La Stella tonight? The pancake I was flipping fell to the floor as I read his words. How did he know where I worked? I hadn't mentioned it in our brief conversation. I stared at my phone, a cold feeling spreading through my chest. How do you know that? The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. I make it my business to know things, Sophia. I should have been terrified. Any sane person would have been, but something in me, the part that had been struggling alone for too long, felt a strange relief at the thought that someone was watching over us, however unsettling the circumstances. Yes, I work tonight. 4 to midnight. Your babysitter reliable? I thought of Kendra, the teenager from 2 floors down who watched Emma when I worked nights. She was kind, but often on her phone instead of paying attention to my daughter. She's all I can afford, I replied honestly. 3 dots again. Not anymore. Check your email. I grabbed my laptop from the counter and opened my email. There was a new message from a company called Elite Childcare Services. It detailed a full-time nanny service, already paid for 3 months in advance. The nanny would arrive at 3:30 today, with impeccable references and background checks already completed. I can't accept this, I typed quickly. It's too much. You can, and you will, for Emma. The mention of my daughter sent a wave of conflicted emotions through me. On one hand, this level of interest from a stranger was deeply unsettling. On the other, the thought of Emma having proper care while I worked filled me with relief so profound, it was almost painful. Who are you? I finally asked. Someone who can help you. That's all you need to know for now. I bit my lip, staring at the message. Thank you, I wrote back, because what else could I say? You're welcome, Sophia. Enjoy your day with your daughter. And just like that, the conversation ended. I stood in my kitchen, phone in hand, wondering what kind of person had that kind of money and power, and why they'd chosen to focus it on me. The nanny arrived precisely at 3:30 that afternoon. Ms. Chen was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She showed me her credentials: former preschool teacher, CPR certified, background check so thorough it made my head spin, and immediately connected with Emma, who was delighted by the educational toys Ms. Chen had brought with her. The service said you're paid for 3 months? I asked hesitantly, as I prepared to leave for work. Ms. Chen nodded. Everything is taken care of, Ms. Jenkins. Your daughter will be well looked after. As I walked to the bus stop, I tried to wrap my head around what was happening. Who was this mystery benefactor, and what would he want in return? Because in my experience, no one gave something for nothing. La Stella was busy that night, the dining room filled with the city's elite enjoying overpriced pasta and wine that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. I moved between tables with practiced efficiency, my smile firmly in place despite my distraction. It was nearly 8 when the maitre d' approached me, looking nervous. "Table 7 requested you specifically," he said, straightening his tie. "It's Mr. Castellano." The name meant nothing to me, but the maitre d's anxiety was contagious. "Is there a problem?" No, he said quickly. He's an important client. Very important. Don't keep him waiting." I made my way to table 7, tucked away in a private corner of the restaurant. As I approached, I saw him, the man from last night, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been poured onto his body. He was even more striking under the warm lighting of the restaurant than he had been in the dim hallway of my apartment building. Beside him sat another man, older and bulkier, with the watchful eyes of a bodyguard. The moment our eyes met, I knew this wasn't just some wealthy Good Samaritan. The deference of the staff, the private table, the silent bodyguard. I had accidentally texted someone powerful, someone dangerous. I reached the table, my heart pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. "Good evening," I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. "What can I get for you tonight?" His dark eyes never left mine. "Sophia," he said, my name like velvet in his mouth. "It's good to see you in person, properly, this time." I swallowed hard. "You know my name, but I don't know yours." A small smile played at the corner of his lips. "Dante Castellano." He gestured to the seat across from him. "Join me for a moment." It wasn't a request. The bodyguard stood, pulling out the chair for me. I glanced around nervously, but the maitre d' nodded emphatically from across the room. "Sit down," his expression said. "Whatever he wants, give it to him." I sank into the chair, my legs suddenly weak. Up close, Dante Castellano was even more intimidating. Not just because of his obvious power, but because of the intense focus he directed at me, like I was the only person in the entire restaurant. "How did you find me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He took a sip of his wine, a rich red that glimmered like blood under the restaurant's lights. "Finding people is what I do, among other things." A chill ran down my spine. "What other things?" His eyes held mine, and for a moment, I glimpsed something dark and vast behind them. "Business. Family matters." He set his glass down precisely. "How is Emma feeling?" The mention of my daughter from those lips made my maternal instincts flare. "She's better," I said cautiously. "Thank you for the medicine." "And Ms. Chen? Is she satisfactory?" I nodded, unable to look away from his intense gaze. "She's wonderful. But I don't understand why you're doing all this. What do you want from me?" Dante leaned forward slightly, and I caught the scent of his cologne, something expensive and subtle that made me think of dark woods and hidden places. "Let's just say your text message landed with someone who understands the importance of family, of protection." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Tell me about Emma's father." The abrupt change of subject caught me off guard. "There's nothing to tell. He left before she was born." "His name?" The question was soft but carried unmistakable command. "Why do you want to know?" Protective instinct made me hesitate. Though I wasn't sure who I was protecting, Emma's father certainly didn't deserve it. Dante's expression didn't change, but something in the air between us tightened. "Sophia," he said, my name a warning and a caress at once. "I don't ask questions twice." I looked down at the pristine white tablecloth. Jason Miller. But he's not in the picture. Hasn't been since I told him I was pregnant. "And this... Mike? The one you meant to text?" Heat rushed to my face, embarrassment, anger at myself for getting into this situation. "Just a guy I've been seeing. It's not serious." "No," Dante said, with such finality that my eyes snapped back to his. "It's not." The way Dante said those words, "it's not," left no room for argument, as if he were stating an immutable fact rather than making an assumption about my relationship. A flutter of indignation rose in my chest, but it was quickly smothered by the reality of my situation. This man, whoever he really was, had inserted himself into my life with surgical precision. "Mr. Castellano," I began, trying to reclaim some control. "I appreciate your help, but Dante," he interrupted, his voice softer now. "Call me Dante. Dante." I repeated, the name feeling foreign on my tongue. I'm grateful for what you've done for Emma and me. Truly. But I can't help feeling there's something you're not telling me. Why are you really interested in us? He studied me for a moment, then signaled to his bodyguard, who stepped away to give us more privacy. Your text message, he said. It reminded me of someone I couldn't help. A shadow crossed his face, so quickly I might have imagined it. But I can help you. There was something almost vulnerable in that admission, at odds with his commanding presence. Before I could press further, he continued. I'm hosting a charity gala tomorrow night. You'll attend with me. Again, not a request. I opened my mouth to protest. I had a shift tomorrow. I had no suitable clothes. I couldn't leave Emma. But he raised his hand slightly. Ms. Chen is available. Your shift has been covered. His eyes gleamed with something like amusement. As for attire, you'll find something appropriate delivered to your apartment tomorrow morning. You can't just rearrange my life, I said, finding my voice at last. You don't even know me. But I'd like to. The intensity of his gaze made my breath catch. I find you intriguing, Sophia Jenkins. A woman who would do anything for her child, who works 2 jobs and still struggles, who accidentally texts a stranger rather than ask her deadbeat boyfriend for help again. He leaned forward slightly. I want to know more. I should have been frightened. I should have stood up and walked away, but there was something in his eyes, not just power and command, but genuine interest, and maybe even a hint of respect. It had been so long since anyone had looked at me like I mattered. I have tables to serve, I said finally, not agreeing to his invitation, but not refusing it either. He nodded, accepting the deflection. Of course, 7 o'clock tomorrow. A car will pick you up. I stood on shaky legs, feeling his eyes on me as I walked away. The rest of my shift passed in a blur of confused thoughts and racing heartbeats. Who was Dante Castellano? Why had my misdirected text sparked such interest? And why couldn't I stop thinking about the intensity of his gaze? When I arrived home just after midnight, Ms. Chen was reading in the living room. Emma was fast asleep, she reported, and had been cheerful all evening, no fever, good appetite. The apartment was spotless. Dinner leftovers were in the fridge, and Emma's favorite outfit was laid out for tomorrow. Mr. Castellano called, she added as she gathered her things to leave. He said to tell you that the car will arrive at 6:30, not 7, so he'd already assumed I would accept his invitation. I frowned, torn between irritation at his presumption and a flutter of anticipation I didn't want to acknowledge. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept replaying our interaction, the commanding presence that filled the room, the way his accent thickened slightly when he said my name. I thought about Mike, too. Unreliable. Selfish Mike, who hadn't even bothered to text back about Emma being sick. The contrast between the 2 men couldn't have been starker. Morning came too soon. Emma bounced into my room at dawn, her fever completely gone, chattering excitedly about Ms. Chen and the new toys they'd played with. The relief of seeing her healthy washed over me like a wave, temporarily pushing away my confusion about Dante Castellano. As promised, a delivery arrived mid-morning. The box was elegant, cream-colored with a gold-embossed logo I didn't recognize. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, lay the most beautiful dress I'd ever seen. Midnight blue silk that shimmered like the night sky, with a modest neckline and a cut that would hug curves I'd forgotten I had after years of baggy waitress uniforms and cheap jeans. Beneath it were matching shoes, a delicate clutch, and a velvet box containing a simple but elegant sapphire pendant. I stared at the contents, running my fingers over the silk in disbelief. The dress alone probably cost more than 3 months' rent. There was a note, handwritten on thick cardstock. Blue to match your eyes, D. How did he know the color of my eyes? We'd met twice, briefly, in dim lighting. The thought that he'd noticed such a detail sent a shiver through me that wasn't entirely unpleasant. When Ms. Chen arrived in the afternoon, she brought another surprise. A stylist and makeup artist who transformed my apartment's tiny bathroom into an improvised salon. They worked on me for hours, turning my usually frizzy brown hair into soft waves and applying makeup that enhanced rather than masked my features. The woman I saw in the mirror afterward was both strange and familiar, like a version of myself from an alternate reality where life had been kinder. "Mommy, you look like a princess," Emma gasped when she saw me, her eyes wide with wonder. I crouched down carefully in the beautiful dress. "Thank you, baby. Ms. Chen is going to stay with you tonight while Mommy goes to a work thing." "With the man who brought Mr. Bunny?" Emma asked, clutching the stuffed rabbit Dante had included with the medicine. I blinked in surprise. "How do you know about him?" Emma smiled. "He called Ms. Chen's phone to talk to me. He asked if I liked Mr. Bunny and if I was feeling better. He has a nice voice." A cold feeling spread through my chest. Dante had spoken to my daughter without my knowledge or permission. The boundary he'd crossed sent alarm bells ringing in my head, yet Emma seemed entirely untroubled by the interaction, pleased even. Before I could process this new information, a text arrived. "Car outside." I kissed Emma goodbye, made Ms. Chen promise to call if anything happened, and stepped out into the evening air. A sleek black car waited at the curb, a driver in a dark suit holding the door open for me. As I slid into the plush leather interior, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the window and barely recognized myself. The car glided through the city streets, eventually turning onto a private drive that wound up into the hills overlooking the skyline. We passed through security gates and approached a sprawling mansion aglow with lights. My stomach tightened with nerves. I didn't belong here, among the wealthy and powerful. What was I doing? The car stopped at the entrance, where Dante stood waiting. He wore a tuxedo that made him look even more devastatingly handsome than before. His dark hair slicked back, his posture emanating authority. His eyes widened slightly as I emerged from the car, a reaction so subtle I might have missed it if I hadn't been watching him so closely. "Sophia," he said, extending his hand to me. "You look beautiful." His touch sent electricity through my skin. "Thank you for the dress," I replied. "It's too much." "It's exactly enough," he countered, placing my hand in the crook of his arm and leading me toward the entrance. "You deserve beautiful things." The interior of the mansion was opulent beyond anything I'd ever seen. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, priceless art on the walls. Waitstaff circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres, while string musicians played in a corner. The guests were clearly the elite of the city. I recognized a few faces from magazine covers and news reports. "Who are all these people?" I whispered to Dante as he guided me through the crowd, his hand a warm presence at the small of my back. "Business associates, politicians, people who owe me favors." His mouth curved into a small smile. "Don't worry. You're the most interesting person here." I felt eyes on us as we moved through the room, curious, speculative glances that followed our progress. Dante introduced me to a few people, important names I immediately forgot in my nervousness. He kept me close, his hand never leaving my back, as if staking a claim. We eventually reached a quieter area, a private terrace overlooking the city lights spread below like scattered diamonds. Dante dismissed the security personnel with a nod, leaving us alone. "You've been quiet," he observed, handing me a glass of champagne. "Having second thoughts about accompanying me tonight?" I took a sip, the bubbles dancing on my tongue. "I'm having third and fourth thoughts, actually. I don't belong in this world, Dante. And what world do you think I belong in?" His tone was curious rather than offended. I gestured vaguely at the mansion, the party, the view, all of this. Power, money, influence. I hesitated, then added what I'd been suspecting since our meeting at the restaurant. The kind of world where people call you Mr. Castellano and look terrified when they do. He didn't deny it. Instead, he studied me with those penetrating eyes. "You're not afraid of me." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "I probably should be, but you're not." He moved closer, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Why is that, Sophia?" I looked up at him, at the face that could have belonged to a fallen angel, beautiful and dangerous in equal measure. "Because you've been kind to Emma," I said honestly, "and because I think there's more to you than whatever it is that makes others afraid." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or appreciation for my candor. "You see me," he murmured, almost to himself. Before I could respond, a man in a dark suit approached, apologizing for the interruption. He whispered something in Dante's ear, too low for me to hear. Dante's expression hardened, the warmth I'd glimpsed moments ago vanishing behind a mask of cold authority. "Take care of it," he ordered, his voice like ice. "No witnesses." My blood ran cold at the words. The man nodded and disappeared as quickly as he'd come. Dante turned back to me, his expression softening slightly. But I took an involuntary step back, champagne sloshing in my glass. "No witnesses?" I repeated, my voice barely audible. "What does that mean?" Dante sighed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "Business, Sophia. Nothing for you to concern yourself with." "It sounds like the kind of business that gets people hurt," I said, unable to keep the tremor from my voice. He moved toward me slowly, as if approaching a frightened animal. "There are many kinds of power in this world. Some require protection." "Protection," I echoed hollowly. "Is that what you call it? What would you call what I've done for you and Emma?" He countered, his eyes holding mine. "Is that not protection as well?" The comparison struck me like a physical blow. Was I accepting help from a man who ordered violence as casually as he ordered wine? What did that make me? "I should go," I whispered, setting down my glass with shaking hands. This was a mistake. "Sophia." He caught my wrist as I turned to leave, his grip firm but not painful. "Don't run from me." "Why not?" I challenged, finding courage in my growing fear. "What happens to people who run from Dante Castellano? No witnesses?" Pain flashed across his face, so raw and unexpected that it stopped me in my tracks. "I would never hurt you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Or Emma. Never." I wanted to believe him. God help me. Despite everything I'd just heard, I wanted to believe there was a line he wouldn't cross. "Then let me go," I said quietly. To my surprise, he released my wrist immediately. "The car will take you home whenever you're ready," he said, his composure returning. "But I hope you'll stay. There's more you should know." I hesitated, torn between the sensible urge to flee and the pull I felt toward this dangerous, complex man. What more could there possibly be? He glanced around to ensure we were truly alone, then stepped closer. "Jason Miller," he said, the name of Emma's father sounding strange in his mouth. "Did you know he's back in the city?" The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "What? How would you—" I stopped, remembering who I was talking to. Of course he would know. "Why do you care about Jason?" Dante's jaw tightened. "Because he's involved with people who are dangerous, Sophia. People who don't care who gets hurt in their business dealings. People who might remember he has a daughter somewhere." Fear gripped my heart, different from my fear of Dante, deeper, more primal. Fear for Emma. "Are you saying Emma could be in danger? Because of Jason?" "I'm saying," Dante replied carefully, "that the protection I've extended to you and Emma isn't just charity or interest. It's necessary." The world seemed to contract around me, narrowing to this moment, this revelation. "Tell me everything," I demanded, my voice steadier than I felt. Dante led me to a secluded bench on the terrace, positioning himself between me and the party inside, as if physically shielding me from the world beyond. "Jason Miller isn't just Emma's absent father," Dante began, his voice low. "He works for the Vasquez family. Even I, in my sheltered existence, knew that name. The Vasquez cartel had been in the news for years. Drugs, weapons, human trafficking. They operated mostly across the border, but had tendrils stretching into our city. As what? Some kind of dealer?" I asked, trying to reconcile this information with the Jason I had known. Selfish and irresponsible, but not a criminal mastermind. "As an accountant," Dante replied, his mouth twisting with contempt. "He launders their money, helps them invest in legitimate businesses, makes them look respectable." I shook my head in disbelief. Jason was studying finance when we met, but he could barely balance his own checkbook. "How could he possibly work for—" "People change," Dante interrupted, "especially when the money is good, and Jason's gotten very good at what he does. So good that he's attracted attention from both sides of the law." A horrible thought struck me. Is that why you've been helping us? To get to Jason through me? The idea that my misdirected text had been nothing but convenient timing made my stomach turn. Dante's eyes flashed. "No. My interest in you has nothing to do with him." "Then what?" Because if Emma's in danger because of Jason, I need to know everything. He hesitated, seeming to weigh his words carefully. The Vasquez organization is under pressure. Law enforcement on one side, rival organizations on the other. They're desperate, making mistakes, and desperate people look for leverage. Leverage, I repeated, the word tasting bitter. You mean Emma? Jason never mentioned having a daughter, Dante said, confirming my suspicion. But recently he's been asking questions, making inquiries about you, your location, your situation. Cold dread spread through me. After 5 years of nothing? Why now? Because the Vasquez family is looking for insurance policies, ways to ensure their key people stay loyal when things get difficult. Dante's expression darkened. Family members make excellent insurance. My head spun with the implications. So you're saying Jason might try to, what? Take Emma? Use her somehow? Or the Vasquez family might. Either way, it puts both of you at risk. Dante reached for my hand, his touch surprisingly gentle for someone who radiated such power. The night you texted me by mistake, I was already having Jason watched. When I saw your name in the message, I connected the dots. I pulled my hand away, needing distance to think clearly. So this whole thing, the money, the nanny, this dress, it's all just because I accidentally texted someone who happens to be watching my ex? Dante's expression remained impassive, but something flashed in his eyes. Hurt, perhaps. The coincidence of your text is what brought you to my attention, yes. My continuing interest is something else entirely. The intensity of his gaze made me look away. And what exactly is your interest, Dante? Because you still haven't told me who you really are, or why you'd be having Emma's father watched in the first place. He stood, buttoning his jacket in a gesture that seemed automatic. Walk with me. I followed him along a winding path through immaculate gardens, security personnel appearing and disappearing at a respectful distance. The night air was cool against my bare shoulders, and I suppressed a shiver. You asked who I am, Dante said at last. I'm the head of the Castellano family. We have business interests across the city, real estate, shipping, hospitality. Business interests, I echoed skeptically. Is that what you call it? A small smile played at the corner of his mouth. What would you call it? The Mafia, I said bluntly, no longer afraid to name what I'd suspected since our meeting at the restaurant. You're a mob boss. He inclined his head slightly, neither confirming nor denying. My family has protected this territory for 3 generations. The Vasquez organization wants to expand their operation here. I've been discouraging them. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. So Emma's father works for your enemies? Yes. And I accidentally texted you, of all people? Yes. I stopped walking, trying to absorb the cosmic joke that fate had played on me. And now you're what? Protecting us from them? Or using us as pawns in your war? Dante turned to face me, his expression grave. I don't use children as pawns, Sophia. Ever. That's a line I don't cross. Something in his voice, a rawness that hadn't been there before, made me believe him. So what happens now? I asked quietly. Now I continue to ensure your safety. Both of you. He stepped closer, close enough that I could see the faint scar above his left eyebrow. Smell the subtle cologne that seemed to be part of him. Unless you want me to stop. I knew I should say yes, tell him to back off, figure out some way to protect Emma on my own. But the thought of facing Jason or the people he worked for without Dante's resources terrified me. Why would you do this for us? I whispered. What do you get out of it? His eyes searched mine. At first it was strategic. Keep you away from Miller, monitor the situation. He paused, and something in his expression shifted, became more personal. Now, I find myself invested in your well-being. Both of yours. Why? I pressed. Because you're different, Sophia. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my face with a touch so gentle it made me tremble. You look at me and see the man, not just what I represent. You challenge me. You're not afraid. I should be, I murmured. Perhaps. But your hand lingered near my face, and that interests me. The air between us seemed to crackle with tension. I was acutely aware of his proximity. of the power he emanated, and of my own inexplicable response to it. I should have been repelled, horrified even, but instead I felt drawn to him like a moth to flame. A discreet cough interrupted the moment. The same man who had spoken to Dante earlier had returned, hovering at a respectful distance. "What is it, Antonio?" Dante asked, not taking his eyes off me. "It's been handled, sir, but there's another matter requiring your attention. Inside." Dante nodded, dismissing him with a gesture. "I need to attend to this," he said to me, regret evident in his tone. "Will you wait?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As he walked away, I sank onto a nearby bench, my thoughts in chaos. I had stumbled into a world I barely understood, with dangers I couldn't fully comprehend. And at the center of it all was Dante Castellano, a criminal, a protector, a contradiction I couldn't resolve. I pulled out my phone to check on Emma. Ms. Chen answered immediately, assuring me that everything was fine. Emma was asleep. The apartment was secure. I could hear the soft sound of classical music in the background. "Mr. Castellano has arranged for additional security in your building," Ms. Chen added, her voice matter of fact. "Very discreet. You won't notice them unless there's a problem." Of course he had. Dante seemed to think of everything. I thanked her and ended the call, staring at my phone screen. There was a text from Mike that I hadn't noticed earlier. "Sorry, babe. Tight on cash right now. Maybe next week?" I stared at the message, feeling nothing but a dull contempt. Mike had no idea about the world I'd stumbled into, the dangers surrounding Emma, or the protection we'd gained. He was irrelevant now, a reminder of a life that already felt distant. I deleted his message and blocked his number. When Dante returned some 20 minutes later, he seemed different, tenser, more guarded. "I apologize for the interruption," he said formally. "Is everything all right?" I asked. He glanced at me, seemingly surprised by my concern. "It will be," he replied after a moment. "Business complications. The kind that require no witnesses?" I couldn't help asking. Dante's expression hardened slightly. "You disapprove of my methods. I disapprove of violence," I corrected. "Especially if it's happening because of me." "Not because of you," he assured me. "This is an ongoing negotiation with the Vasquez organization. They're being persuaded to pursue opportunities elsewhere." I hugged myself against the night chill. "And if they don't? If they come after Emma?" Dante's eyes flashed with something dangerous. "They won't get near her, or you." He slipped off his jacket and placed it around my shoulders in a gesture that felt strangely intimate. "I protect what's mine, Sophia." The possessive statement should have alarmed me. Instead, it sent a forbidden thrill through my body. "I'm not yours," I said, though the words lacked conviction. He smiled, a predator's smile that made my heart race. "Aren't you? The moment you texted me, the moment I saw you at your door with your daughter sick inside, something changed. For both of us." He was right, though I was reluctant to admit it. Something had changed that night. A door had opened between two worlds, and I had stepped through it, perhaps irrevocably. "I should go home," I said, pulling his jacket tighter around me. "Emma might wake up and wonder where I am." Dante nodded, accepting my deflection. "Of course. My driver will take you." As we walked back toward the house, he kept a respectful distance, no longer touching me, but I could feel his presence like a physical force, drawing me in even as my better judgment urged caution. The car ride back to my apartment was silent, my thoughts too turbulent for conversation. Dante had insisted on accompanying me, sitting across from me in the spacious back seat, his eyes occasionally meeting mine in the darkness. When we arrived, he escorted me to my door, his security team remaining discreetly by the car. In the dim hallway of my building, with his jacket still around my shoulders, I felt the strange unreality of the situation. The midnight blue dress, the sapphires at my throat, the mob boss standing outside the apartment I could barely afford. "Thank you for tonight," I said awkwardly, slipping off his jacket and handing it back to him. "Keep it," he said. "It's cold in your apartment." The casual observation, accurate but impossible for him to know unless he'd been in my apartment while I was gone, reminded me of how much power he wielded. how easily he could insert himself into my life. "Have you been watching me?" I asked directly. He didn't deny it. "Protecting you," he corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" I challenged, finding courage in the familiar surroundings of my own hallway. Dante stepped closer, and I felt my back press against my door. "Yes," he said softly. "Watching is passive, protection is active. It requires intervention, commitment." His eyes held mine. "I'm very committed to your safety, Sophia." His proximity was overwhelming, his scent enveloping me. For a wild moment I thought he might kiss me, and even wilder. I wanted him to. But he only reached past me to open my door with a key I hadn't given him. "Ms. Chen will be here until noon tomorrow," he said, his voice regaining its businesslike tone. "I've taken the liberty of enrolling Emma in a better preschool, one with proper security. The details are inside." I should have been angry at his presumption, but all I felt was a confused gratitude. "Dante," I began, not sure what I wanted to say. He waited, his expression unreadable. "I don't know how to navigate this," I admitted finally. "Any of it." His face softened slightly. "You don't have to navigate it alone anymore." He reached out, his fingers brushing my cheek in a touch so light I might have imagined it. "Good night, Sophia." I watched him walk away, a dark figure of power and mystery, before stepping into my apartment and closing the door. Ms. Chen nodded from the couch where she was reading, then tactfully retreated to the kitchen to give me privacy. I checked on Emma, who was sleeping peacefully, Mr. Bunny clutched to her chest. In the soft glow of her nightlight, she looked so small, so vulnerable. I thought of Jason, of the Vasquez family, of the danger Dante had described. My heart clenched with fierce maternal protectiveness. Whatever Dante Castellano was, criminal, protector, both, he had the power to keep my daughter safe. And for that, I realized with a clarity that should have frightened me, I would accept almost anything. The next few weeks passed in a surreal blur. Dante had seamlessly inserted himself into our lives, transforming them in ways both subtle and profound. Emma started at her new preschool, a prestigious place with smiling teachers, an impressive curriculum, and security measures I tried not to think about too deeply. I no longer worked at La Stella. Instead, I'd been offered an administrative position at one of Dante's legitimate businesses, with flexible hours and a salary that made me dizzy the first time I saw the figure. Our apartment had undergone mysterious improvements. A new heating system, better appliances, reinforced locks. Nothing flashy enough to attract attention, but significant upgrades nonetheless. Ms. Chen continued to care for Emma when I couldn't, becoming something between a nanny and a family member. And Dante was a constant presence at the edges of our lives. He rarely visited the apartment, maintaining a careful distance that I found both frustrating and oddly respectful. But he texted daily, checking on both of us. Sometimes he sent gifts, books for Emma, a cashmere sweater for me when the weather turned cold. Always things we needed rather than ostentatious displays of wealth. I still hadn't figured out exactly what I felt for him. Gratitude, certainly. Fascination, undeniably. And something else. Something deeper and more dangerous that stirred whenever I thought of him. It was a Tuesday afternoon when everything changed. I was at work, reviewing contracts in the office Dante had provided, when my phone rang with the school's number. "Ms. Jenkins?" The director's voice was tense. "There's been an incident involving Emma. She's fine," she added quickly, "but we need you to come immediately." My blood turned to ice. What happened? Is she hurt? "She's unharmed, but upset. A man attempted to remove her from the playground. Our security intervened. The world tilted beneath me. I'm coming right now. Don't let anyone near her." "We've already called Mr. Castellano," the director said, confirming what I had begun to suspect, that the school had been instructed to contact Dante in any emergency. "His security team is here. Emma is safe." I barely remembered the drive to the school, my mind racing with terrifying possibilities. When I arrived, the building was surrounded by sleek black SUVs. Men in suits spoke into earpieces, their eyes constantly scanning the surroundings. I was escorted inside by one of Dante's men, led to a private office where Emma sat on a small couch, clutching Mr. Bunny. Dante was kneeling before her, speaking softly. When she saw me, she launched herself into my arms with a cry. "Mommy, a bad man tried to take me." I held her tightly, my heart hammering against my ribs. "It's okay, baby. You're safe now. I've got you." Over her head, my eyes met Dante's. His expression was terrifying, cold fury barely contained beneath a calm exterior. "The man has been detained," he said quietly. "We need to talk, but not here." I nodded, understanding the layers of meaning in his words. Emma clung to me, and I stroked her hair soothingly. "Can we go home?" she asked in a small voice. Dante shook his head. "Not yet, little one. It's not safe right now, but I have a special place where you and your mom can stay for a while. There's a swimming pool and a garden. Would you like that?" Emma's eyes widened. She looked at me for confirmation, and I nodded, though I had no idea what Dante was proposing. "Okay," she said cautiously. "Good girl," Dante said, his voice gentler than I'd ever heard it. "Now, Ms. Chen is waiting outside. She has a surprise for you while your mom and I talk for a minute." Emma hesitated, then slid from my lap when Ms. Chen appeared at the door with what looked like a new stuffed animal. Once she was out of earshot, I turned to Dante. "What happened?" I demanded. "Who tried to take her?" Dante's jaw tightened. "One of Vasquez's men. He posed as a maintenance worker." Fear and anger surged through me. "I thought you said they wouldn't get near her. You promised she'd be safe." "And she is," he replied, his voice hard. "My people stopped him before he could get within 10 feet of her. The security measures worked, Sophia." I pressed my hands to my face, trying to steady my breathing. What if they try again? What if next time your people aren't fast enough? There won't be a next time. The cold certainty in his voice sent a shiver down my spine. "But you can't stay at your apartment. Not anymore. It's too exposed." I dropped my hands, facing him squarely. "Where then?" "You mentioned a place with a pool. My home," Dante said simply. "It's secure, private. No one gets in or out without my knowledge." The implications of what he was suggesting washed over me. Moving into Dante Castellano's home meant crossing a line I had been carefully avoiding for weeks. "Dante," I began hesitantly, "I appreciate everything you've done for us. But living in your house, people will talk. They'll assume—" "Let them assume," he interrupted, stepping closer. "Sophia, someone tried to take your daughter today. Does it really matter what people think?" Put that way, it didn't. Nothing mattered except keeping Emma safe. "How long?" I asked. "Until the threat is neutralized." His eyes met mine, dark and uncompromising. "I won't lie to you. That could take time." "And what exactly does neutralized mean in your world, Dante?" I asked, though I already knew. He didn't flinch from the question. "It means ensuring the Vasquez organization understands the consequences of targeting what's under my protection. It means making Jason Miller regret the day he mentioned he had a daughter." His voice dropped lower. "It means whatever is necessary to keep you and Emma safe." The ruthlessness in his tone should have frightened me. Instead, it awakened something primal in my chest. The fierce, protective instinct of a mother whose child had been threatened. "Do it," I said, surprised by the hardness in my own voice. "Whatever it takes." Something flashed in Dante's eyes. Approval, perhaps, or recognition. He nodded once, then took my hand. His touch was warm, solid, grounding me when everything else felt chaotic. "Pack a bag when we get to your apartment," he instructed. "Just essentials. Everything else can be replaced." Within hours, Emma and I were installed in Dante's mansion, the same one where the charity gala had been held. Though it felt different now, less like a showplace and more like the fortress it truly was. Emma, resilient as only children can be, quickly forgot her fear in the excitement of exploring our new temporary home. The swimming pool turned out to be an indoor pool with mosaic tiles and gentle waterfall features. The garden was acres of manicured ground surrounded by walls and state-of-the-art security. Dante gave us adjoining rooms in the east wing, spacious, elegant, but not overwhelming. Emma's room had been hastily but thoughtfully prepared. with toys, books, and a canopied bed that made her squeal with delight. "It's like a princess castle, Mommy," she exclaimed, bouncing on the plush mattress. I smiled at her enthusiasm, relieved she wasn't traumatized by the day's events. "Yes, it is. But remember, it's just for a little while." "Because of the bad man?" she asked, her expression suddenly serious. I sat beside her, choosing my words carefully. "Yes, baby. There are some bad people who might want to hurt us. So we're staying here where it's safe until they're gone." Emma nodded, processing this with the straightforward logic of a child. "Is Mr. Dante going to make the bad people go away?" The question caught me off guard. "Why do you think that?" She hugged Mr. Bunny to her chest. "Because he's strong. And he looks at you like the princes look at the princesses in my stories." Heat rushed to my face. "Emma, Mr. Dante is just helping us because he's kind." She gave me a look that was far too knowing for her 4 years. "He likes you, Mommy. A lot." Before I could formulate a response to this startling insight, Ms. Chen appeared to help Emma get ready for bed. I retreated to my own room, overwhelmed by the day's events and my daughter's perceptiveness. My room was elegantly appointed in creams and soft blues, with a balcony overlooking the gardens. On the bed lay a robe and nightgown in my size, and the bathroom was stocked with toiletries. All the brands I used, I noticed with a mixture of appreciation and unease at the thoroughness of Dante's knowledge about me. After a long shower, I changed into the provided nightgown, simple but made of silk that felt like water against my skin, and stepped onto the balcony. The night air was cool, stars visible above despite the city lights in the distance. I leaned against the railing, trying to process everything that had happened. "May I join you?" Dante's voice startled me. He stood at the doorway to my room, still in his suit, though he'd removed the tie and unbuttoned the collar. He looked tired but alert, the lines of his face more pronounced than usual. I nodded, and he stepped onto the balcony, maintaining a respectful distance. For a while, we stood in silence, looking out at the darkened gardens. "Emma's asleep?" he asked eventually. "Yes." The excitement wore her out. I turned to face him. "Have you found out anything more about the man who tried to take her?" Dante's expression hardened. "Yes." He confessed everything. I didn't ask how they'd made him confess. Some details I'd learned were better left unexamined, and it was Jason's idea, Dante said, his voice carefully controlled. He told the Vasquez family about Emma, suggested using her as leverage in their negotiations with me. The betrayal cut deeper than I would have expected. Jason had abandoned us without a backward glance, but to actively put Emma in danger? He would use his own daughter like that? Men like Jason don't see children as people, Dante said quietly. They see tools, assets, pieces to be moved in their games. Something in his tone suggested personal knowledge of such men. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the mild night. What happens now? Dante moved closer, his presence solid and reassuring. Now we keep you both safe here while I resolve the situation permanently. You make it sound so simple, I murmured. The concept is simple, he replied. The execution, less so. But it will be done. I studied his profile in the moonlight. The strong jaw, the straight nose, the intensity that never seemed to leave him. Why are you doing all this, Dante? The truth this time. He turned to face me, his eyes searching mine. From the first moment I saw you. Exhausted, worried about your daughter, but still standing tall. Something in me recognized something in you. His voice softened. Strength, resilience, a willingness to do whatever necessary for those you love. He stepped closer. Those are qualities I understand. Qualities I respect. Is that all it is? Respect? I challenged, my heart racing as the distance between us narrowed. No, he admitted, reaching out to brush a strand of hair from my face. It's much more than that. The touch of his fingers against my skin sent electricity through me. This is complicated, I whispered. You're complicated. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Yes. I barely know you, I continued, even as I leaned slightly into his touch. The parts I do know should terrify me. Do they? He asked, his hand now cupping my cheek. I closed my eyes briefly, acknowledging the truth. No. They should, but they don't. When I opened my eyes again, Dante was looking at me with an intensity that took my breath away. From the moment you accidentally texted me, Sophia, you became mine to protect. Now. He paused, his thumb tracing my lower lip. Now I want you to be mine in every way. The possessiveness in his words should have offended me, but instead, it awakened something primal and long dormant. In Dante's world, possession meant protection, devotion, absolute commitment. After years of men who had taken without giving, who had made promises they never intended to keep, there was something intoxicating about his straightforward claim. And if I don't want to be possessed? I asked, testing him even as my body betrayed my true feelings by leaning closer. Then I'll continue to protect you and Emma, he said without hesitation. Nothing changes that, ever. The sincerity in his voice broke something loose inside me, the last of my resistance, perhaps. I reached up, touching his face as he was touching mine. And if I do? His eyes darkened, and in one fluid movement he pulled me against him. Then I'll never let you go, he whispered against my lips before claiming them with his own. The kiss was unlike anything I had ever experienced, passionate but controlled, as if Dante was holding himself in check even as he claimed my mouth with his. His hands remained gentle on my face, though I could feel the tension in his body, the power he kept carefully restrained. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing heavily, the air between us charged with electricity. "Stay with me tonight," he murmured, his forehead resting against mine. "Just to sleep. I need to know you're safe." The vulnerability in his request surprised me. This wasn't the demand of a possessive man, but the plea of someone who genuinely feared for my safety. I nodded, unable to deny the comfort his presence offered after the terror of the day. He led me back inside, closing the balcony doors and drawing the curtains with a carefulness that spoke of security concerns rather than privacy. When we lay down on the massive bed, he pulled me against his chest, one arm wrapped protectively around my waist. I could feel his heartbeat, strong and steady against my back. "Sleep," he whispered, pressing a kiss to my hair. "I'll be here." Exhaustion claimed me quickly, the emotional toll of the day pulling me into a deep sleep despite the unfamiliar surroundings and the man beside me. For the first time in years, I felt completely safe. I woke to sunlight filtering through the curtains and the sound of Emma's laughter from somewhere in the house. Dante was gone, but a handwritten note lay on his pillow. "Had to handle some business. Antonio is outside your door. Emma is with Miss Chen in the kitchen. Join us for breakfast when you're ready. D." The domesticity of it struck me as I dressed in clothes that had mysteriously appeared in the closet overnight. All my size, all better quality than anything I'd owned before. This strange new life we were building felt both surreal and oddly right. When I opened my bedroom door, Antonio nodded respectfully from his post. "Good morning, Ms. Jenkins. The boss asked me to escort you to the kitchen." "Is that really necessary inside the house?" I asked, unused to such scrutiny. Antonio's expression remained professional. "Mr. Castellano's orders, ma'am. Until the situation is resolved." The situation. Such a neutral word for what was happening. I nodded and followed him through the winding corridors of the mansion. We passed several more security personnel, all with the same vigilant eyes and subtle earpieces. The kitchen was unexpectedly warm and inviting. A large open space with gleaming counters and sunlight streaming through windows that overlooked a herb garden. Emma sat at a central island, happily eating pancakes shaped like animals while chatting with Ms. Chen. And there, at the stove with his sleeves rolled up, stood Dante Castellano, making what appeared to be an omelet. The domestic scene was so at odds with everything I knew about him that I stopped in the doorway, momentarily speechless. Dante looked up, his eyes warming when they met mine. "Good morning," he said, with a smile that transformed his usually serious face. "Coffee?" "Please," I managed, taking a seat next to Emma, who immediately launched into an excited description of her bedroom and the toys she'd discovered this morning. Dante moved around the kitchen with unexpected grace, placing a perfect omelet in front of me along with a steaming mug of coffee prepared exactly how I liked it. The normalcy of it all was disconcerting. A family breakfast with the most dangerous man in the city. "Did you sleep well?" he asked. his voice casual, though his eyes held a deeper question. Better than I have in years, I admitted quietly. Something flickered across his face. Satisfaction, perhaps, or relief. He nodded once, then turned to Emma. And what about you, little one? Did you like your princess bed? Emma nodded enthusiastically. It's the best bed ever. Can we stay here forever, Mr. Dante? An awkward silence fell. Dante's eyes met mine over Emma's head, carefully neutral, waiting for me to respond. We'll see, sweetie, I said gently. For now, we're just visiting until the bad people are gone. About that, Dante said, his tone shifting to something more businesslike. He glanced at Ms. Chen, who immediately understood. Emma, would you like to see the fish pond in the garden? She asked. I think I saw some very colorful koi there yesterday. Once they had left, Dante sat across from me, his expression grave. We've located Jason, he said without preamble. He's being held at a Vasquez property outside the city. I set down my coffee cup carefully. Held? I thought he was working with them. He was, Dante confirmed. But it seems his plan to use Emma backfired when my security stopped their man. The Vasquez family doesn't tolerate failure. A cold feeling spread through my chest. Despite everything, despite what Jason had tried to do to our daughter, he was still Emma's father. Are they going to kill him? Dante studied me, his expression unreadable. They might. Unless someone intervenes, I stared at him. Realization dawning. You could intervene. You could save him. I could, he agreed, his voice neutral. The question is, should I? The question hung between us, heavy with implications. What was I asking for? Mercy for a man who had abandoned his child, then tried to kidnap her? Or closure for a little girl who might someday want to know her father, however unworthy he was? Not for him, I said finally. For Emma. She might have questions someday that only he can answer. Dante nodded, accepting my reasoning without judgment. I'll bring him in. After that, you decide what happens to him. The power he was handing me should have been terrifying, but in that moment it felt right. This was about Emma, about our future. I should have a say in how it unfolded. Thank you, I said simply. He reached across the table, taking my hand in his. There's more we need to discuss. The Vasquez situation has become complicated. They're making a major push into the city, and I need to deal with it decisively. What does that mean for us? I asked, sensing the gravity behind his words. It means I'll be away for a few days, he said, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. The house is secure. You and Emma will be safe here with Antonio and the security team. Fear clutched at my heart. Is it dangerous, what you're doing? A shadow of a smile touched his lips. Everything I do is dangerous, Sophia. Don't joke about this, I said, tightening my grip on his hand. Emma needs you. I hesitated, then added softly. I need you. Something flashed in his eyes, surprise, followed by a warmth that transformed his entire face. You have me, he said, raising my hand to his lips. More than you know. The next 3 days were among the most anxious of my life. Dante left that afternoon after a private conversation with his security team that left them all looking grim and determined. I tried to maintain a sense of normalcy for Emma, exploring the mansion's many rooms, swimming in the indoor pool, reading in the extensive library. But always, at the back of my mind, was the fear that Dante might not return. It was strange how quickly he had become essential to me, not just for protection or security, but for himself, his quiet strength, his unexpected gentleness with Emma, the way he looked at me as if I were something precious rather than broken. On the third night, I was reading in the library, unable to sleep, when Antonio appeared at the door. His usual stoic expression had given way to something like relief. Mr. Castellano has returned, ma'am. He's asking for you in his study. I hurried through the halls, heart pounding. When I entered the study, a masculine space of dark wood and leather, Dante was standing at the window, his back to the door. He turned as I entered, and I gasped at the bruise on his cheekbone, the cut above his eye. You're hurt, I said, crossing to him immediately. He caught my hands as I reached for his face. It's nothing. Superficial. I searched his eyes, looking beyond the injuries to what lay beneath. Is it over? Yes, he said simply. The Vasquez family has agreed to leave the city and cease all operations here. Permanently. The finality in his voice told me not to ask how this agreement had been reached. Some details of Dante's world would always remain in shadow, and perhaps that was for the best. And Jason? I asked. Dante's expression hardened slightly. He's being held securely, as promised. His fate is yours to decide. I took a deep breath, having thought about this constantly in his absence. I want him gone, far away from Emma, from us, but alive. Not for his sake, but because someday Emma might want answers. And because I don't want that kind of blood on our hands. Dante nodded, seemingly unsurprised by my decision. He'll be persuaded to accept a new identity, a new life far from here. He won't contact you again. Thank you, I said, meaning it. Then, unable to contain myself any longer, I stepped into his arms, careful of his injuries. I was worried about you. His arms closed around me, strong and secure. I told you I'd come back to you. Promise me you always will, I whispered against his chest, hearing the steady beat of his heart. He pulled back slightly, lifting my chin with his finger so our eyes met. Always, he vowed. The word holding all the weight of an oath. Then he kissed me. A kiss that spoke of homecoming and promise, and possibilities I had never dared imagine. Weeks passed, then months. Emma and I never returned to our old apartment. Instead, the mansion became our home, gradually warming with our presence. Emma's drawings on the refrigerator, my books scattered in the library, family dinners in the kitchen, rather than the formal dining room. Dante's men remained a constant presence, but they faded into the background of our lives, a security blanket rather than an intrusion. I continued working for Dante's legitimate businesses, discovering a talent for organization and management that earned me respect beyond just being the boss's woman. Emma thrived in her new school, making friends and showing an aptitude for music that Dante immediately nurtured with the finest piano teacher in the city. As for Dante and me, our relationship deepened with each passing day. He was still the powerful, dangerous man I had first met. I occasionally overheard conversations that reminded me of exactly who and what he was. But with us, he showed a different side. Playful with Emma, passionate and tender with me, fiercely protective of the family we were building. It was a crisp fall evening, almost a year since my misdirected text, when Dante took me for a walk through the garden. The leaves were turning golden and crimson, the air carrying the first hint of winter. Emma was inside having her piano lesson, the sweet notes of a simple melody floating through the open windows. I've been thinking, Dante said, his hand warm around mine, about the future. Oh? I looked up at him, at the face I had come to love despite, or perhaps because of, all its complexities. He stopped beside the koi pond, turning to face me fully. My world is dangerous, Sophia. I've tried to keep that separate from you and Emma, but there's always risk. A flutter of anxiety passed through me. Are we in danger again? Has something happened? No, he assured me quickly. But I want to be honest with you about what life with me means. The protection will always be necessary. There will always be parts of my business that you can't know about. There will always be enemies. I touched his face gently. I know who you are, Dante. I've known since that night at the restaurant. And yet you stayed, he said, wonder in his voice. Because I see all of you, I replied. The businessman, the protector, the man who makes animal pancakes for my daughter. I choose all of it. All of you. Something shifted in his expression, a vulnerability I rarely glimpsed. I need to know that choice is permanent, Sophia. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. I need to know you're mine, truly mine. My breath caught as he opened the box, revealing a stunning emerald-cut diamond set in platinum. It was elegant rather than ostentatious, perfectly suited to my taste. Marry me, he said, his voice rougher than usual. Be my wife, my partner, the mother of our family. Tears pricked my eyes as the full circle of our journey hit me, from a desperate text sent to a wrong number to this moment of absolute certainty. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise, rare and beautiful and worth waiting for. He slipped the ring onto my finger, then pulled me into his arms, kissing me with a tenderness that belied his strength. "Mommy, Mr. Dante." Emma's voice rang out as she ran toward us across the lawn, her piano lesson evidently finished. She skidded to a stop beside us, her eyes immediately drawn to the sparkling ring. "Is that a princess ring? Are you going to be my new daddy now?" Dante knelt down to her level, his expression serious. "Would you like that, Emma? If I became your daddy," she considered this with the directness of childhood, "will we still live in the castle?" He laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "Yes, little one. We'll still live in the castle. And will you still make pancakes and keep the bad men away?" His eyes met mine over her head, full of promise. "Always." Emma threw her arms around his neck. "Then yes, I want you to be my daddy." As I watched them together, this dangerous, complex man and my innocent daughter, I marveled at the strange path that had led us here. A wrong number that turned out to be exactly right. A text message that had changed everything. Life with Dante Castellano would never be simple. There would always be shadows in our world, dangers kept at bay by his power and influence. But there would also be this: love, protection, family. A man who would move heaven and earth to keep us safe. A father for Emma who would teach her strength and loyalty. A partner who saw me completely and wanted me anyway. As Dante stood, lifting Emma into his arms while reaching for my hand, I knew with absolute certainty that I had found my home. Not in a mansion or behind security systems, but with him, this beautiful, dangerous man who had become our protector, our provider, our everything. One accidental text message, one moment of desperation, and a digit entered wrong. And now, a lifetime stretching before us, complicated, sometimes dangerous, but always, always ours.